Bates, there were big cheers there when he made reference to equal pay for women, to the minimum wage and Obamacare. Is there enough in that speech there to start the process of winning over support for those elections later this year?
Well, clearly he devoted a whole section of his speech to this whole notion of inequality while not using that term. He spoke about, opportunity for people of color, opportunity for women, the minimum wage, of course, changing the tax code, home ownership, and interestingly, it was in that section where he talked about health care. So what he did was he spoke of health care as a way to bring opportunity, improving one's lives, and that was again how he tried to take, a program which is generally popular, especially things like insuring young people under parents' coverage. That story about the woman who if she had not signed up a week earlier, would be bankrupt. That resonates with a lot of Americans, and clearly he was speaking to his strongest supporters in the country, which are people of color, women, and young people.
Okay, the President has left the chamber there now, but back to Lisa, and we're just about to wrap up, but I'd like to go to foreign policy for a moment, Lisa, just as we wrap up. And you mentioned it was principally domestically focused, but he did mention foreign policy there towards the end. And there were two statements that he said that stood out to me, that open-ended conflicts may feed extremism, and America doesn't want to go down that path again, and America must come off a permanent war footing. Is that kind of the strongest language you've heard from him in relation to that?
Oh, I think that's the general feeling we've been getting from the President. Certainly, I mean, it's why America has not thrown itself into Syria, and I mean, so he's just confirming what people have believed. I thought the interesting part on the foreign policy area was about Iran, basically saying, if you send me new sanctions, I'll veto them, because there'd be some Democrats who are a bit uncomfortable with that line of process with Iran, because people are still very suspicious. But clever of him to compare it to the former USSR and saying, well, if Kennedy can deal with the USSR, surely we can deal with Iran. Yeah,
Lisa, I was saving Iran for Bates. So Bates, were you surprised at his spirited defence of going down the path of negotiations with Iran?
Yeah, I was. I mean, obviously, to say it as strongly as that, it's not going to make anyone happy in parts of Israel, of course. Those that support the so-called Israel lobby in the United States aren't going to be happy with that. And that actually is quite bipartisan. It's not just a Republican or Democrat question. So that was pretty forceful. We'll see how it goes. He sort of put himself out on a limb there, because, if things don't work out, or if Iran does ultimately get a nuclear weapon, then what he had to say just now is going to look rather foolish. I also found it very interesting, his comment about getting off of a permanent war footing. Pretty strong language for an American president, but again, this resonates with the American people. The American people are tired of this war, and that's why he kept going back to the fact that this is our longest war, it's now over, and we're not going to do that again.
Okay,
Joe, could I just say one final?
Lisa. Very
briefly. I just say one final thing? Given that we had so much concentration on it in the last speech, and that was about gun violence, interesting that gun control warranted 2 sentences.
A couple of people have pointed that out on Twitter, I note. Okay, Lisa Miller in Washington, thanks always for your learned observations, and Bates Gill here in Sydney from the US Studies Centre at the Sydney University.